Puzzles are a classic conundrum in D&D that parties can look forward to, but they can also be a little hard to make and even harder to naturally integrate into a quest. Today we're going to talk about how we created a puzzle, but also how we weaved in aspects from our quest to make the solving of it easier or harder. The quest this puzzle is a part of already has a video on the channel, and watching that will certainly give you some context, but definitely isn't necessary to understand what's going on. If you want to integrate this puzzle or quest into your own campaign, check out the Patreon where all resources I've ever made exist, and thank you so much to everyone who has already joined. Also, check out the Twitch if you want to make this stuff with us live, and with that, let's talk about how we made this puzzle. So let's look at the first time I even thought about having a puzzle in this quest. Ooh, maybe there's a big door sort of thing, and this artifact is like a key, and the party need to get the key in order to get into that door. I think that's interesting. So this is obviously in the early stages, but this would establish the two main aspects of this puzzle. There is a big door at the end of a dungeon, which has a puzzle in front of it. The party need to solve the puzzle to get in and finish the quest. Pretty standard reasoning to have a puzzle. What is slightly different is that there is also a tablet which helps the party solve the puzzle, which they are advised to get at some point. This second element is really important because this isn't just a puzzle which the party rock up and solve. The quest mostly involves the party acquiring information and forming alliances with NPCs. So there are two ways they can get the tablet. They can become allies with the person who has it, who in turn will give it to them, or they can learn of its location and steal it. I like adding ways for the party to get around puzzles that aren't simply solving them. So in this case, if the party whips out stealthiness or sides with an obvious douchebag, then they are rewarded with an easy solve later in the quest. In my experience, this is incredibly emotionally rewarding for players who have made certain choices or have gone out of their way to help themselves. Creating this sense of validation is the center of puzzle making, and even D&D, but especially when it comes to puzzles. We want our party to feel good when making progress or solving it, so creating crafty ways for them to sidestep around it can also give them that sensation of success. And a lot of the times they can feel even better than if they solve the puzzle normally. Like, haha, I got around this obstacle you put in front of me because I'm so smart and I'm so shifty, even though it's something you created and purposefully wanted them to do. When making the actual dungeon the puzzle would appear in, we would make more progress on it. And we're gonna have a little... there are 5 braziers just before the door to the artifact room. Oh, bless. We're coming up with ideas, absolutely crucially needed ideas for the puzzle in this room, which I absolutely love. Okay, well, there are 5 braziers just before the door to the artifact room. You have to light the braziers in the order the cities vanished. I love that. I think that is like a really cool way to continue the theme of like the ancient cities here as well. And it also means we're gonna have to think of the lore of like the order in which they crickety-crumbed. We would also have it so some of the various NPCs the party can ally with would provide more hints to solve the puzzle. The tablet that they found could be a prophecy that sort of like predicted the end of all of the cities. And the sort of like prophecy, the riddle that we'll sort of create can sort of be this like description of the cities and the different ways that they died. And this could also be something where it's like, we have Aurora who has a little understanding of the other ancient cities, and maybe that Sagan and Talitsi, who don't understand or don't know of the other ancient cities, are unaware of them, and that's why they're finding the riddle so difficult, because they don't like get what they are. On top of this NPC Aurora having information about the solution, there's a third NPC which has found notes about the tablet, so they have a little bit of the solution as well. As this quest is largely about acquiring information and more than just the party arriving in a dungeon and solving a puzzle, I thought it'd be cool to have the NPCs have different levels of knowledge about the puzzle, along with different areas where they could provide help. What makes it so challenging without the tablet though is that it's entirely unclear what the party need to do when they arrive in that room. In my puzzles, I also really like having a punishment for when the party make mistakes, as this can really increase the tension. I think there needs to be a consequence for each time they fail the order. So maybe like each time they fail the order and they go to like light a brazier in the wrong order, it lights in a big gulf of flame, and like burns them. Pretty simple, right? Pretty simple discouraging. It means they can do it as many times as they want, but it does like discourage them from doing it. This also gives space for the party to somehow negate the fire damage, either through magic or skills, which give them autonomy over the consequences of failure as well. If they're smart and creative with D&D, then they're able to lessen or even avoid the consequences altogether of not knowing the solution, which will give them that ever important sense of validation we want to instill in them, as mentioned before. One thing we did need to keep in mind is that we didn't want to make the puzzle impossible without the tablet. So we added some plaques in front of the braziers, which would have an unknown ancient text that the party can turn into common. How about this? Instead of it being burned and turned into common, each one has a specific different spell that needs to be cast on it, right? Like the frost, you do a frost spell or maybe necrotic. Like we can give them a couple options, like frost or necrotic. Oasis Plains can be like fire or something else, right? So it's like instead of the same solution for each, because I like magic revealing it into common, but I think that's maybe like something that can make it a little bit more unique for each of them, because we do want this to be pretty hard. If they don't get the tablet, like the party is meant to get the tablet. Like they're not supposed to be without it. This text would then display the number of years ago the ancient city was destroyed, giving them the answers, but not the problem they're actually trying to solve. With all the pieces set, it was now time to write out the actual puzzle and the riddle on the tablet. We started by giving some description of the 5 stained glass depictions of the ancient cities that are sitting behind the unlit braziers. I'm not going to read them out in full, but there's a city in an ice cave, there's one that's a flying island, one in a volcano, one that only exists in the reflection of a lake, and one that used to be the nation's capital that has recently been destroyed. When writing this out, we also wanted to ensure the threat of a mistake would be actually threatening and not something they can easily sidestep around. I was gonna say, like, do we want to make it like that extra bit difficult where the party need to be standing over the top of them with a torch to really have that danger be seeping in, right? Because, you know, otherwise the party could like stand over here and just shoot fireballs at the various lights, which is obviously like takes away that threat. So I think something that could make it much more interesting is to really add to that threat is that the party needs to actually do it with a torch. And maybe there can be a torch on one of the like, maybe the statue here is holding a torch, and that is clearly indicated to be the torch that they need to light them with. I think that it makes it interesting and adds to that challenge. When writing this out, we also wanted to ensure the threat of a mistake would be actually threatening and the solve of how to get around it isn't too easy. This will also narratively explain why the NPC that has the tablet and has been to this door before has stopped trying. They got fireballed once and then gave up trying to get into the door, giving them a reason to seek out the party for help, which is great because I like having a valid reason why NPCs want and need the party. We then wrote out some possible ways the party might get help or solutions to solve the puzzle. We added all the talking to NPC sort of stuff, but we also added the chance for the party to make history checks to see if they can figure out how many years ago the ancient cities were destroyed. Okay. So what we've been doing for this puzzle is that we've created the basis of what the party are going to see when they come in, which is going to be like this room and these stained glasses. What we've written out is some of the ways that they can actually get this information if they do not have the tablet. And then we have the actual solution. So I think now we can start thinking about the tablet, because this is the key piece. This is not a puzzle that is meant to be completed without it. And as I said before, is it something we do trial and error, or do we give them a hint? I do think that just doing, if you don't have the tablet, it's fucking hard. And you have to get really high rolls, or you have to talk to these specific NPCs and you get a couple hints, but you're still gonna have to make some leaps of logic. So let's talk about the tablet, because we've done what happens if you don't have anything. Let's talk about it if you have the entire solve. And we want the riddle to be really, really obvious. We want it to be really obvious. So what the tablet needs to do is explain what the solution is, because the big difficulty with the puzzle is that they don't actually know what they're meant to do. Even if they have this information, how are they supposed to know that it needs to be lit in the order that they were destroyed? It's very unclear, nothing states it. So the tablet needs to say what the riddle is. And then I think it needs to give information about give a little hint on it so they can figure it out. And I think this makes it for a really easy version of the middle of when they side with Sagan, then Sagan will have some notes, and I think the main note can be, this is what you need to actually do, put them in the order they were destroyed, and then can have one note on one of the cities. And this will give them, the biggest issue is, how do we actually figure when they were destroyed, and then give them a little bit of a clue. So I think those are going to be the levels, and we'll just write those out. The riddle itself would become a poem, one that would be a little flowery and obtuse, but on purpose. Yeah, I like the idea of I think this is a pretty good poem, but having it be that little bit clunky because A, it's a translation, but B, so it's just a little bit harder of a challenge. Yeah, it's going to be still pretty obvious. They shouldn't really struggle with it if they do have this tablet, but it's not going to be just pure exposition that's hey, this is exactly what you need to do. So that's one of the reasons I like making riddles a little bit clunky. And it also justifies why, hey, my poems aren't incredible. But I think this is pretty good. I'm not a poet, so I'm not too worried about it. So the poem itself goes like this. Okay, let's give this a little read. See how it goes. Once there were 5, filled and alive, but now they are gone, obscured and withdrawn. The glass connect to the light protect, the order of the city's defect. A volcano's power, built-in fire tower, led to disaster hour after hour. The city's water birthed the daughter that led to its death and slaughter. A cavern so cold they never grew old, letting the city fall into fold. From up so high they defend from the sky until their actions would make them die. The grandest of all, the last to fall, now in the open, the ruined Capitol Hall. Great. I like that. I gave a little note about each of the cities, but didn't read out the full stained glass descriptions, and you can pause and read them if you want, but feel free to try to match them up and see if you can solve the solution yourself. If you do have both pieces of information, then this should be fairly easy, but in some ways a somewhat tricky puzzle even with the tablet, which is good because it's meant to be a highly protected door that people can't just saunter into. And that's how we would create a puzzle that has the quest fully integrated into it and has multiple solutions, a variety of hints provided and help given, and would have its difficulty change depending on the actions taken by the party. I'm a really big fan of this puzzle. It's not my favorite puzzle I've ever made for D&D, but the way it melds together with the quest is way more natural than anything I've ever done before, where often my puzzles are obstacles for obstacles' sake. And yeah, that is what is going on here, but having some NPCs that can give information about the puzzle or some items which will help the party solve it makes it a little bit more than just, hey, it's puzzle time, baby, buckle in and get your logic brain going. Anyway, if you want access to this puzzle or massive mystery quest it's a part of, check out the Patreon for access to every D&D resource that I've made for this campaign. Also check out the Twitch so you can make stuff like this live, and if you like this kind of content, subscribe to the channel because there are new videos like this every single week. And with that, thank you for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next one. Bye!